Thank you everyone for joining today's webinar on standardizing body attachment points for 3D commerce virtual try-on. Our presenter for today's webinar is Patrick Hadley from Snap. On today's agenda, Patrick will share newly proposed glTF extensions associated with eyewear, footwear, and jewelry, while further discussing the challenges around 3D apparel. First, a couple of housekeeping notes. If you have any questions during the presentation, please ask them using the Q&A feature located on your Zoom toolbar at the bottom of your screen. We are recording this webinar and we'll share the link and the recording along with the slides on the event page. At the end of the session, please complete the short survey to help us better design future events. With that, we'll hand it off to Patrick Hadley, AR Shopping Technology Product Manager for Snap. Patrick? Patrick, you're on mute still.
Sorry about that. Hey, everybody. How's it going? As mentioned, my name is Patrick. This is something that I deal with kind of weekly at my work here at Snap. So this is something I'm excited to be driving for the Khronos Group. Today, we're going to be talking about standardizing body attachment points for 3D commerce virtual try-on. Just kind of a quick high-level agenda. This isn't a super long presentation, so that's good. It'll leave a lot of time for questions at the end. Again, if you're watching this live, you have a way to submit your questions. And then if you're watching this after it's been recorded, go ahead and feel free to add questions into the video questionnaire chat if possible. But we'll go into a quick intro about myself. We'll look at the industry and try to understand what are some of the problems we're seeing with virtual try-on, especially with the interoperability piece. There'll be 4 proposed new glTF extensions that we're driving to help solve that interoperability. We'll focus on footwear, eyewear, wrist, and ring, but there'll also be future extensions that we can look into and talk about. And then as part of this, even though it's not necessarily what will be part of the initial glTF extension that is being proposed, we also developed a framework that can be applied more broadly for anything that is human, skeletal, or avatar related. So we'll look at that framework as well. And then at the end, we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. So a little bit about me. I'm currently a product manager at Snap, working on their AR shopping technology. I've been here for about 1.5 years. We have virtual try-on experiences and a lot of AR experiences that are kind of native to our app. So a lot of people come in looking for these experiences. I'm also a member of the Khronos Group in 3D commerce. I also attend the glTF, really focused on one of the main areas is the skeletal and facial anchoring, which is turned into this body attachment. And then I'm also an outreach chair for 3D commerce as well. So you might see some outreach coming from me. Previously, before Snap, I was working on Amazon. I was actually one of the initial teams who were leading their charge in developing 3D for home and furniture. That was kind of the initial focus of the 3D commerce group within Khronos. I didn't actually attend the Khronos meetings back then, but we had other people on the team that were focused on the 3D asset creation that did. But just talking a little bit about that, back in my, when we were first started, it was really a challenge to try to grab assets from brands and, different people who would be interested in having a 3D experience on Amazon, mainly because everything was so specialized. We had custom materials being used, we were using a certain renderer. So it really was very fragmented industry. And I will, state that glTF and PBR, which, from the Khronos Group, help standardize the 3D commerce home and furniture space very well. As you can see, we determined the materials, and then we're all talking the same language. So that interoperability to be able to kind of produce and use outside of our, we'll call it walled garden, had a tremendous boost. So therefore, what happens is when you create a chair and you put in certain types of material, certain types of color, it's going to look the same, across renderers, across different applications, and it really allows for that interoperability. When you were placing the furniture, it actually was pretty easy because if you think about it, there was only really three things that it could be. It could either be on the floor, which would be kind of at the bottom center, could be on the wall, which was like the back center, or it could be up on the ceiling, which is in the top center. So the placement really didn't have too much complication. It was much more on the 3D model creation and the specifications of the 3D model itself. Now that we are kind of going beyond furniture, there's some new frontiers that are starting to emerge. Virtual try-on is one in which Snap, and there's a lot of other people who are starting to see the value of allowing customers to have that personalization and that try-on to try before they buy without having to go to the store or having to go to see the product, physically. So for example, at Snap, we have eyewear, footwear, ring, jewelry. We have clothing try-on. We really have, developed quite a few ML technologies that allow for 3D models to be integrated into a human body. The challenge is one of the main tools in which Snap uses to bring these to market is called Lens Studio. I call it almost like the Photoshop for AR. It really is a tool that you can, change individual layers and have, all the way down to individual components of your AR experience. But it's a bit manual. You almost have to position a lot of the stuff. It doesn't really, allow for scale to be able to bring in, catalogs of assets that a retailer might have into an AR experience. When we've tried this, we brought in, out external, bring your own assets from some of our partner brands. And what we've seen is there's really no standard, even though the 3D model now has standards in terms of the materials and the properties, there was really no standard for the try-on experience. And what that led to is we manually would have to build transforms and set it up so that brands would be able to kind of position it how they wanted. But again, each sunglasses could be different. If you look here on the right, some of them are taller in terms of height. They have different, widths. So what this led to was you would have kind of very poor, I'll call it, quality of try-on. So if you see on the left, sometimes the glasses would be too low. Sometimes, it would cut through the occluder and then it would kind of clip on the bottom of the middle screen there. And really what this came down to was we were trying to position these glasses using the center of our occluder head and the bottom of the glasses. So we were almost trying to calculate the distance to move the glasses up to fit them perfectly onto a person's head. And it was very much a challenge to get that consistent quality accurately at scale without a lot of back and forth working with the brands. The other one that we'll highlight, and we'll go ahead and go deeper on each of these, was shoes. If you think about it, if you build the product all internally, you have control over stuff such as what occluder you're being used, what is your standards for such as like the opening. But sometimes you would have photogrammetry scans. Sometimes you would get in assets from external or assets plus custom occluders from external. And it ended up being this very messy, fragmented placement causing problems. If you look on the far left, you can see that the occluder is actually clipping the back of the shoe. And when the occluder does that, it just kind of cuts out the entire shoe. Or if you have too small of an opening, the ankle opening, we were seeing that being clipped quite a bit. And it just ends up breaking the experience. The last one we had, if you have a full foot occluder, you can always chop that off, but anything that would cut into the sides or part of the shoe, again, that occluder will remove that piece of the 3D model, just breaking the experiencing. It really makes it look more 3D or digital, which people lose confidence. And the whole part of the 3D virtual try-on is to kind of gain confidence in your purchase and to really feel that emotional connection with the product that you're trying on. So one thing that we've challenged, or with these challenges, we've kind of come in to say we need to develop standards that will allow for greater interoperability, that'll help solve placement issues, clipping and collision issues. So this is the body anchoring working group. We actually call it a TSG that I've been leading this year. The main focus is for us to have a consistent, best optimal fit, easy to use, and allows for automation or no touch. That was kind of our North Star requirements of what we were looking for. I will share kind of the framework and the glTF extension details in a second, but before we do, there's a little bit of describing some of the nomenclature and the coloring here for people able to understand. I'm going to present it in a table that'll kind of talk about the different body parts. It'll tell, what is the readable definition that we're using. This would almost be what would be used in the 3D model. Whether it's an anchor, fitting or clipping placement, fitting or clipping or attachment. There's 3 different ones, and I'll go over what that means in a second. Whether it's required or optional, and then a little bit more of a descriptive text just to help out. So let's talk about, the orange, purple, and green being different ones. The placement would be almost like, how the object gets placed onto the body, kind of that anchoring point. That's what we would call as being required for this standard. Then you would also have fitting, clipping, where if you thought about like the ankle or the back of the shoe, some of these would be clipping the 3D model. We'll have additional points that will help identify that. And then a fixed attachment point is something special when you have almost 2 models that could be, adjusted, and you want one point to be fixed between the 2, or one model that's shared, I guess, that has a point that would be adjusted between the 2. So we'll take a look at each one of these in more detail. I just wanted to kind of highlight this before we jump straight into some of the spec standards, just for ease of reading. But addressing the footwear ones, we talked about the occluder placement. What we determined was, let's just put a point directly in we'll call it the sole, back sole of the shoe, so that you can almost always just place it at the same point every single time. And then, determining on the size of the opening, we were able to have 4 optional clipping points that would be able to kind of show the size, so that you would always be able to fit your occluder kind of on that back placement point, and then place it onto the body. And then you would be able to kind of determine if your occluder was too thick or would be able to be placed within the shoe without an opening. If there was going to be clipping, you can just remove that model, or you can change your occluder. There's a lot of different things you can do. And then one other thing that we saw was around the shoes being too narrow. Again, originally we were using a full foot occluder that had the foot in. There's really no reason to have the foot occluder for something like sneakers. So we just ended up removing that foot occluder, but we wanted to add in an optional points as well for the width of the shoes. So if you see, there's 1 required orange for placement. That's really the anchoring for the occluder and for the body anchoring. And then we are defining 6 optional clipping key points or placement points, so that you can tell if there's going to be any challenges with the actual try-on. So how this looks in that table that I shared out is, number 1 goes into that shoe sole rear heel. And then the Khronos readable, what would actually be in the 3D model is being defined would be shoe _ insole _ rear. So that will be able to kind of tell you if you see this, if it meets our glTF extension, you'd be able to look for these points within the 3D model to be able to kind of have that automated placement at the right quality and, consistency each and every time. And then for the other ones, the opening, you would have the shoe ankle with the 4 points. One would be the rear, the front, the outer, the inner. So we try to just keep it kind of standardized of the naming. It's almost like the area or the product, the body part, and then a position, with it. So you have the shoe insole, the shoe ankle, and then for the last 2 on the narrowness, which is 3 and 3 on this list, would be the shoe insole inner and the shoe insole outer. So you can kind of see, I tried to put multiple viewpoints, both from the top and from the side, to see how these points could be viewed. And the idea would be during 3D asset creation, the artist would place these points in and then highlight this as a glTF extension of, the footwear extension or whatever we end up naming it. And then just to complete, they can put in a description as well. It's positioned on the back heel. So anything that would be needed there, if you want to say, it's X centimeters or at the very top, or this would allow for kind of the description of comments in that extension as well, to give more information of what do we mean by insole rear, where does exactly that place, and we might even have some of the visuals to help out as well in the extension. Currently this is focused on sneakers. I think there would be opportunities to use the same thing, but something like sandals and others might have a different need for different extensions, and we can look at that as we continue to progress on this. But again, the only one that's actually required would be the anchor, the placement, which is that rear. The other 6 are optional, just to kind of improve for clipping in the try-on experience, but they wouldn't be required to call it the glTF extension. So now that we have footwear, and again, if there's questions, we can always revisit the slides in the Q&A portion. But the next one that we would be focused in on was eyewear. Remember, on the eyewear one, the placement was not consistent on the face, and there's a lot of clipping that was going on. So what we realized is there was 3 key areas that were needed for placement. The main one really was being here on the nose bridge. If you can place kind of the bridge of the glasses onto the nose bridge of the face or the human body, that's one, no matter kind of how you move your face or how you kind of squinch, it almost stays consistent most of the time. So that was what we felt was the best placement point. So the first human, or the Khronos readable, would be a eyewear _ nose bridge. But just having the nose bridge, a lot of times when you would build the glasses, they would just be flat, right? Because you kind of have a bounding box and you want it to be flat. What we'd see is a lot of times the glasses would be pointed too low, depending on how high the back arm, would go. So some of your glasses would be tilted very far down, and it would look pretty awkward. So the other placement that we would have also required would be on the arm of the glasses, to be able to place or anchor onto the ear, the top of the ear. So you've got one anchor to put, the nose bridge, the glasses onto the nose bridge of the human face, and then 2 on each side, one on each side for the top of the ear, so that your glasses will have that kind of consistent placement and accuracy. That'll be, again, high quality, automated, and automatable for the glasses try-on. We also put in 2 optional clipping points, kind of what you saw when it was clipping the bottom of the face. So these, again, are optional, but these would be a eyewear L lens bottom. Maybe I should talk a little bit, if it's not explanatory, the L and the R would be for left and right. So when you have one product that has both a left and a right version, that's how you would differentiate the lens bottom from the left, lens bottom from the right. So again, we were trying to really standardize the naming, so it was a consistent pattern and a consistent name. It would almost be, what's the try-on experience or the facial anchoring that we would do, any left or right designation, where it would be placed, and then something that would define, on the object, what it would be. So glasses temple or the bottom of the lens. Again, you can read through, we'll have this presentation shared out. You can read through some of the descriptions and comments to see exactly where we'd be describing the information, and this will also be included within the glTF extension, as well as the visuals for more kind of information. Great. So now that we've done footwear and eyewear, the next one we wanted to tackle would be around wrist. This could be for watch or for bracelets. This is where we start to get some new items. So again, we'll have an anchor and we'll have stuff for the clipping, but this is one where we'll talk a little bit about sizing to fit onto your wrist. You would adjust the 3D model. But if you're looking to buy a watch, one of the important things might be the face of the watch. What's the size? You don't want to scale that up or down too much. So this is now introducing a new, we'll call it attachment points in green that are also optional, but something that can be used to kind of allow for that scalability without changing the product, right? Because you think the band can be put on at different strap sizes, but the size of the face does not change, based on your size of your arm. So again, same framework here. You would have the pivot point or the placement be on the wristband center. This is where if you wanted to kind of place it onto something like a wrist on a human placement, you would be able to kind of move it, adjust it up or down on the up or down the arm as you see fit. And then we have 3 or 4 areas that would be for clipping. This is around the edges. Somehow these turned yellow, so sorry about that. I think they're supposed to be purple, but you get the idea. The 4 yellow ones kind of around the outside would be able to tell you both, the circumference or the diameter or radius, both from a width and a height standpoint. So if you don't always have a perfect circle, you'd want at least the height and the width of the band. Again, we've got a new item here, which we're defining as an attachment point. So the band could attach onto the watch face. And if you wanted to scale just the pink part, just the band to kind of have a tight fit on the wrist. So for males, you might have quite a bit larger, females, and even within, different size arms for different demographics. We'd want to size that, but you don't want to change that fixed size of the watch face. You would be able to kind of add in these 2 outer watch face inner attachment points that kind of almost separate out that part of the 3D model so it doesn't get scaled, but the rest of the band is able to be kind of adjusted to have a tight fit within that bracelet or within the arm. Again, the one that is required is the wristband center. That's kind of for the placement, just to be able to kind of understand, but to avoid clipping or any kind of issues, we also recommend, following the optional ones as well to have the best quality and try-on experience. And then the last one, this is probably even a more good use case in terms of this attachment point, but it would be around ring. If you think about something like a try-on for an engagement ring, you don't want to scale the diamond size up or down. That would be very misleading based on the size of the finger. So yeah, this would be another example where the band is flexible. You're able to kind of put in the attachment point or the pivot point for the ring center right in the center. And then you've got kind of the same places around the band. So ring top, ring bottom, ring inner, outer. And then the setting would be the attachment point that you can kind of fix that diamond or setting, whatever it would be, and then adjust the band around it. I ran through these fairly quickly. Hopefully you're starting to see the pattern in terms of how it's being proposed of a readable standard wording or formats. There's a required versus optional, additional comments or description, as well as a visual that kind of helps you identify, where these points would actually be. With these 4, the idea would be you would be able to kind of define these at 3D creation and then almost be able to give it to any virtual try-on experience, whether it's on, social media, such as Meta or different things, or something like an Amazon for try on in a sales or e-commerce standard, and you can do this for your entire catalog or your entire set of products, and you'll get that high quality try on consistently for your entire catalog with no manual intervention or manual placement needed. One other thing I want to highlight is during this TSG, we originally sat out to define kind of a broader framework, one that could be used, not just for virtual try-on, but it could be extensible for any human to 3D interaction. So if you think about it, there could be, avatars, there could be other use cases where you want a 3D model that interacts with a human body. And while we were defining this, we didn't want the scope to be just so limited to virtual try-on for the 4 products we had, or products that we would have. So we actually explored quite a bit, what is out there, especially in the avatar space. What we realized is, one, there's no standards. I mean, there's some standards that are trying to be pushed, but there's still fragmentation within the industry. And what it is there's multiple use cases. So I think there's, what is the need for your specific use case, but it could be as simple as Mixamo, for example, has only 8 points to define their avatar. This is mainly used for motion capture. So there'd be a chin on the wrist, elbows, knees, and groin. But then it goes, to the other extreme would be the Web3D consortium. I think they had, 160 points, if I remember correctly. So 128 points. Sorry, my slide was being covered. So it really kind of shows that there's a need to standardize body points and then to have the 3D interaction with it. So one other thing that's not going to be part of the glTF extension, but something that we would propose is still using the same framework, is having a Khronos readable, or that Khronos name, just like what we had for the left, eyewear bottom or lens bottom. We'd be able to kind of define the points on the body that items could be attached to in the same framework. It's extensible to be applied for both the 3D object, defining the nose bridge on the glasses, but as well as on the body, you would have like a point for a nose bridge. So we would have both a medical or precise term in the first column. Then there would be a Khronos readable. And what this would allow then is you could almost map multiple different, I'll call them standards, but multiple different experiences, points onto one standard. That would help a lot for interoperability. So you wouldn't have to say, hey, is the spine on VRM the same as the spine on Unity? And there's, multiple spines. This one has 4, this one has 2. So almost being able to define, the human body points and allow for a standard for people to add on to that as well, is another item which is coming out of this working group that's not, again, going to be part of this initial glTF extension, but something that we really want to socialize and start seeing if there's, a need or ability to adopt this within the industry. We can extend this to all across the body. If you think about the head, the arms, the fingers, the legs, a lot of this stuff is already starting to kind of be defined. But again, there's really no standard naming. There's no standard interoperability between them. So we think having a Khronos body attachment standard or naming convention standard would help, both for labeling for the 3D models and then avatars, as well as the interoperability. So if you wanted to move something from Unity over to another system, this would help with that. So you have consistent and confidence in those placements. So what's next? We are in the process of putting the glTF extension through ratification. The steps is put it into GitLab. You get kind of review from your peers, and then as well as the industry. We're targeting, I'm not exactly sure how long this ratification process typically takes. It depends on how much feedback you get. But I think we'd be targeting a Q1 2024 for the ratification. We might start with just one, something like eyewear or footwear, but the idea would be, to get all 4 to be put in so that we can start labeling these products for that interoperability. And some of you might say, well, hold on, I've created hundreds of shoes, they've already been created. One other thing that we're looking at is, can Khronos develop tools for creators so that we'd be able to almost automate the labeling of these points, so that you can kind of put in your 3D model and then get back out these key points being labeled with the glTF extension naming convention and placements as well. So that is something that we're looking into and developing, and we'll give more updates there as we progress. But right now there's no timeline for that, but the extension, is going through the ratification process and is targeting for kind of end of this year would be, ideal, but probably more likely Q1 of 2024. And then the other thing that's next is we're not going to stop with just the 4 that we have. These are the ones that we saw kind of, immediate benefits with somewhat less controversial of the definitions. Again, we'll see during the ratification process if that's true or not. But I do want to highlight one area that is also, ripe for getting standardization would be around the apparel industry. We actually have, when I did this presentation at SIGGRAPH, there was a tremendous interest from the apparel industry. We've been kind of defining what do we do with that. One thing that we've decided is with the Khronos 3D Commerce Group, we want to start these things each quarter that are called exploratory working groups, which is not just limited to members of Khronos and people that are within the Khronos org, but we almost want to go out and kind of look at new frontiers, something like apparel, really bring in the industry, talk with a lot of different people and experts and people facing these challenges, try to put together those challenges into solutions that can be brought into glTF standards or different standards to really help with interoperability of that. So if anybody's listening on the apparel, please reach out. I'll have my email at the end, or find a way to get in contact with the Khronos. I think there's multiple areas to reach out, but this is a big focus for the 3D commerce in Q1 of next year. We're planning to attend like the PI apparel conferences and some more information to follow. But that would be one that has a lot of challenge right now with the virtual try-on and the consistency of interoperability going beyond some of the creation tools or the processes that are internal for a house, a brand. We also will have other opportunities such as earring, necklaces, or even handbag. Right now you can put handbag on a surface, but placing it on the body, how do you create the 3D model to be able to use on both? So this is just a little teaser of we're not done just with these 4, but we'll continue to kind of innovate here and drive standardization for the industry interoperability in this new frontier that is virtual try-on. So that's it for my presentation. Like I said, it was kind of short. I do want to open it up for questions. So if you guys have any, I haven't seen anything in the questions yet, so I'll turn it back over to see if we have a list of questions. But go ahead and submit your questions now. And thank you for listening to my presentation.
Thank you, Patrick. That was wonderful. We do have a few questions just in the queue that I would love to run by you.
Okay.
Who else has been part of defining these virtual try-on standards?
Yeah, great question. So one partner who we have worked with pretty closely at Snap was Amazon. We actually had a announcement last year where we brought in 7,000 of their eyewear assets. So part of this was the challenges we faced in bringing in that many assets. So Amazon has aligned to these already, at least for eyewear and footwear. They've also seen it for the jewelry. So the good news is that the people who are starting to align will almost automatically be able to kind of accept these glTF standards because they're building it into their processes. Another big player that we're working closely with is Meta. There's AR experiences with their Spark AR as well as Snap AR. We want to be able to kind of have this interoperability so that a brand is able to kind of use their assets multiple places, or even an AR creator when they're creating experiences. So right now those are probably the 2 biggest players, but we're definitely interested in partnering with anybody that is has an opinion here. There is the formal glTF extension process where everybody has a say. So please, if there's a feedback or opinion, please be part of that process so that we can make sure that what gets ratified is the best for the industry.
Wonderful. Okay. Does this also apply to virtual try-on of avatars in the metaverse?
Good question. The framework that I had at the end would be something that we would almost propose. There's actually a Metaverse Standards Forum group that is dedicated just to interoperability of avatar like apparel and avatar accessories. I have been working with them, off and on. But yes, the idea would be if we could almost use these standards for anything that is humanoid or body um, uh, integration with 3D experiences. I think the challenge with the avatars, though, would be you could have different size characters and different, places. So I think there's a little bit more of a skinning that happens with the avatars, but we are working with, industry players there as well as the Metaverse Standards Forum. I actually think that unique challenge of avatars probably is best handled with that Metaverse Standards Forum avatar group. But the hope is that as this new standard gets socialized, more and more people will adopt kind of that naming convention and then use it as part of their standards when they do have that standard for avatar interoperability.
Oh, great. Okay. And I've got one more question here. Have you already seen or reached out to existing standards like IEEE Body Parts or 3D Consortium?
Yes, this has been brought up. It got brought up at CGRAPH. We do see that there's kind of some existing standards again for some of the stuff, such as the eyewear or footwear. They don't have these points defined. So again, we really wanted to have almost that precise term or that precise definition, as well as the Khronos readable. So those precise definitions should be not unique to this, right? It should be kind of used across. So we'd be able to leverage something like that Web 3D consortium or these different IEE standards for that naming. And then what actually gets applied in terms of a Khronos standardization or a name for being what gets placed into the model. If there's a great name that exists already, we would go ahead and leverage it. But otherwise, we would probably want to try to align to that standard pattern that we had, which kind of defines the item or the try on naming left, right, wear on the body. So anything that we can do to kind of align with those standard boards of that same pattern for naming is something we're interested in.
That's wonderful. All right. Well, I think that's about it, unless anybody in the audience has a question they want to drop in. Thank you so much, Patrick. We appreciate your time and energy and sharing all this wonderful information with us. As we leave, I just wanted to remind the audience we have several glTF webinars that are based on SIGGRAPH talks that we have recently completed. Those are all online on the khronos.org/events page. So we encourage everyone to go check those out. And also, as you leave, we will have a survey popping up, and it would be great if everybody could fill that out. And it helps us immensely in determining topics and future webinar things for the Khronos Group. Also, just wanted to remind everyone that there is a recording of the presentation and the slides that will also be available for this webinar. So go back to the khronos.org/events page and you'll see it under past events. And if you need any more information on the Khronos Group, specifically glTF, feel free to drop us a note and visit our website. And thank you everyone for joining. Thanks again, Patrick.
And thank you. Appreciate it.
All right.